again, everybody. Spooktober continues. It's We Watch Shudder. My name is JD. Who's here with me?
It's Michelle.
Yeah, that's right. It's always Michelle, you guys.
Always.
You know what we're doing by now? We're going through talking about movies that are originals and exclusives on Shudder. We've been doing it for a while. All those new releases once a week. But what are we doing in October, Michelle, for those people who might just by happenstance be tuning in for the first time?
We're doing something really fun in Spooktober where we are going
spooky.
back. We're watching the movies that we saw before we started the podcast. And we are doing a new movie episode every day.
Every day.
Super scary.
Yeah, it's a lot of stuff. Don't worry, we didn't spend like 2 weeks cramming all of these in. It's as we record this, it is Saturday, April 16th.
I like
It's
that
very ambitious.
we keep reminding them of that. We're like, they must not fall into our illusion and
You
think
must never
that we
know
are
that we
hardworking.
didn't I know. We're clearly more obsessed with the fact that we're recording these 6 months in advance than anybody else is going to care. One of these days, I'll stop mentioning it. I don't know why. It's so stuck in my brain.
I especially think that people are going to listen to these every day and just be impressed by how many we got through. And they'll be like, I mean, really, with enough notice, they could have done one every day in October. They're very ambitious.
Absolutely. Which is, that's exactly what we're doing.
Yep.
Today is day 5. This should be October 5th. As you're listening, is that correct, Michelle, or is this October 6th?
It is currently October 5th in the
October
future.
5th. Yes, when you're listening to this. Okay, what movie are we talking about today?
We are talking about The Room, the Tommy Wiseau classic.
No.
We're going to talk about how his wife, Lisa, cheated on him with his best friend, Mark. He couldn't take it. She was tearing him apart. Right?
No, not, it is called The Room.
Uh-huh.
But it's not that The Room.
Oh,
Please
no,
tell
I
me
watched the wrong movie.
Oh, no. Well, that's too bad because I have never seen the legendary Tommy Wiseau The Room, and I refuse to ever see it just because it irritates so many of my friends that I've never seen it. And it's
I am very upset about it.
one of my last vestiges of being that button push and jerk. I refuse to watch Tommy Wiseau's The Room, and I also refuse to ever read a Harry Potter book. And now that's not such a big deal anymore, but at one point in my life, it was a huge deal for a lot of people.
But
Then Joanne became a turf bitch, and I would only ever use that word in this particular context because I have no respect for her, and she doesn't deserve it.
We did convince you eventually to give in to Hamilton, though. So I feel like Tommy Wiseau's The Room, 10 years from now, you will break down.
I did put up quite a fuss about Hamilton, but also I hasten to say that a big part of the fuss I put up about Hamilton is that I was given a very, I feel, inaccurate representation of what it actually was. Essentially, I was under the impression that it was just like, oh, black people pretend to be the founding fathers, and it's so much more than that. So much more than that. It's a fabulous music. Why are we talking about Hamilton on We Watch Shudder?
I really like that this has become the new episode.
Look, man, you can like horror movies and musical theater at the same time, and
Absolutely.
Hamilton is fantastic.
Wicked for life.
Anyway, I love that one too. It's really
Didn't
good.
we just talk about Rent in yesterday's episode?
I believe so. Yeah, we talked again about how I got very negative impressions about what Rent was really all about, and then it's not that at all. And I used it as a really poor example. Go back and listen. I'm not going to repeat the details.
We are now a horror movie musical podcast.
We're also now almost 5 minutes into this episode, and we haven't even started talking about the movie.
You know what? That's perfect.
Yeah, it is. I love it. So today's film, again, as we said, is The Room from the official Shudder website. In search of a more authentic life, Kate and Matt leave the city for an old house in the middle of nowhere, Maryland. There, they discover a hidden room that has the extraordinary power to grant any wish. Their new life becomes a true fairy tale, but beneath the bliss, something darker lurks. Some wishes can have dire consequences. a Shudder original. Michelle, you know how we do this. Hit us with your spoiler-free thoughts.
I do know how we do this. Okay, spoiler-free thoughts. I really like the concept of this movie.
Okay.
More than I like the execution, but I do really like the concept and I thought it was very interesting. The characters themselves did not make the smartest choices, and that is part of why I didn't love it. I would say it was a good movie in that it made me think afterwards. And I really like horror movies that make me kind of think. This was kind of more thriller than horror. It classifies itself as a drama fantasy horror on IMDb, and I feel that's fair. It's not really in the horror category. So as like kind of a weird psychological thriller, I would give it a 3.5 skulls.
Michelle going with 3.5 skulls. I should let you know that on the Shudder website, at least as we record this, the aggregate rating is a full 4 skulls. I also thought there were things in the concept of this film that were really interesting. There were ideas that I was curious about and was waiting to see how they would play out. Wasn't quite so satisfied with how they did play out to this extent. Michelle, I fucking hated this movie. This is my least favorite movie we have watched so far to date on this podcast. I can't give this movie even one full skull. This is a half skull movie at best. Look here. Let me just. My first problem with this movie. I don't know who wrote it, but the script feels like it was written by a 6-year-old, and the actors are not good. I did not enjoy a single thing about anybody's performance in this movie. It was flat, and I didn't believe any of it, and that starts with the script. It's not just bad performances. It's bad performances on top of terrible writing. Some of the dialogue in this movie made me just nauseated, and we'll go into those details in a bit. I did not like this movie even a little bit, and frankly, I feel like you may owe me an apology for making me watch it.
Wow.
I really disliked this film a lot.
I'm really excited to get into spoiler territory because I need the breakdown of this.
Okay. All right. Well, then that's where we're going. So yep. I went with half a skull. Michelle went with 3.5 skulls. That hits us with an average of 2 skulls. Mm-hmm. Which is half of what the aggregate is. And again, I always like to point out, I'm kind of a harsh critic sometimes, but in a lot of cases, my harsh criticism doesn't match the general consensus. So, I mean, who am I? I'm just some dummy that didn't like it.
Which is fine. I am also a dummy who does not like things. And as we have found, you and I have opposite feelings on most things.
Oh, we often do, and that's half the fun.
We knew there was some difference. Yep. I did not realize until I started looking at, like, how opposite we are.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I liked this movie even less than I liked No Roy the Curse.
That's what I was surprised by. Wow.
This movie did, not only did it do nothing for me, there are things about it that actively turned me off. Anyway, that's enough chatter about that. For those of you who now want to go watch the movie before we dig in and hit you with all the spoilers and everything and kind of dissect this one, this is where you're going to want to do that. Cut right here.
Honk, honk, get in the car. We're entering the spoiler zone.
Right
beep,
on.
Beep,
all right.
Get out of the road, dear. Oh, God, we hit it. We're in the ditch. Okay, anyway, yes.
As we enter the spoiler zone, this is something I want to do because the idea hit me as I was keeping my notes for this movie, which ended up being very short and not a lot of them. But I'm going to just read to you verbatim a list of notes that I have on my phone that I took as I watched this movie. It almost becomes like, poetry. I don't know, like avant-garde poetry.
Love it.
Here we go.
Snaps for the poetry.
Right. Goes something like this. Oh, I fucking love that house. Damn. Oh, neat. Her shirt matches the wallpaper. Wait, somebody hid the room but not the key? Oh, okay, whiskey bottles got my attention. Nope, never mind. Man, these actors are terrible. If she wishes for a kid, I'll fucking shit. Oh, go fuck yourself. All caps on that one. Man, somebody really thought this shit was clever. Dear God, this is profoundly stupid. I hated this movie. I liked the idea of the house. I thought, like, what is this house? What is this weird machine in the house that powers this room that makes wishes come true, but then they can't leave the building? Like, that element of it, the very initial concepts of it, I really, really enjoyed. And then everything they did with it after they set up that basic framework was utter trash. I hated I thought it was so deliberately overblown about the whole angle with, oh, we had 2 kids that died, and I was like immediately I was like, oh God, she's gonna wish for a kid, and there's gonna be a kid, and it's gonna be a weird thing about the kid. And then it just turns into Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade, the movie. It's the last bit of that movie just blown up into a full story. Everything's immortal here, but if you leave the house, it turns to dust. It's like the guy, you can't leave the cave with the chalice or you lose the... Anyway, there was the dialogue in this movie is revolting. I have another example to read from my notes as long as I'm on this diatribe. This is literally transcribed word for word from the dialogue of the film as these 2 cretins are about to enter this room for the first time. One of them, the woman, says, "This is scary." And then the other guy says, "Yes, it is, but we should enjoy it." And then the first one says, "I have a bad feeling." And then they just go into the room. It's so poorly written. If I remember correctly, I think there's like 6 different people who all worked on writing this movie, and it took 6 people to make this soup of mush and nonsense. Unbelievable. Just so poorly. I didn't enjoy any of the story ideas. I thought it was trying to be like shocking in ways that just didn't interest me in any way at all. It's like, oh, not only is he a kid, but now he's growing up real fast, but he's only growing up in his body, and he's still like a kid in his mind, and now he's fucking his mom, and now maybe she's having his kid, and what are the... It was so dumb. And there was so much more that you could have done with that basic concept of and they never tell you anything at all about the house whatsoever. You get nothing about what is actually going on here. It's just a creepy, weird house with a room that grants wishes. Also, side note, somebody took the time to wallpaper up that room and try and hide it, and then they just left the key laying around somewhere else in the house. They didn't hide the key anywhere. This is terribly written, terribly acted. I hated it. Okay, I think I got it all out.
Ooh, deep breath. Breathe just once. You got very red. I was worried about you.
I appreciate your patience while I got all of that out of my system. Yep. Please take me to task on whatever you would like now.
Okay. I did not expect you to hate this movie that much. Oh. I can say that. Wow.
Oh, I really didn't like it.
That's surprising. Okay. I don't feel super passionately about this movie, so it's hard to combat that.
I sure did.
I know. Part of it is you paid way more attention to it, probably because you hated it than I did, whereas I was like, I'm kind of bored at this part, and so I didn't pay as much attention, and I just waited.
I was very bored for the whole movie.
But you paid a lot of attention, and I just kind of like blinked out where I was like, okay, let me know when something cool happens. So I guess I was more forgiving of the parts where I'm like, well, that's not great. Okay, one thing we can both agree on is that they took such a good concept, and then they did not live up to the expectations of that concept.
Absolutely.
And that is definitely in my criticisms, which is why it's like, this is kind of an interesting movie. It made me think about the ending. It made me think about the possibilities. It made me think about all these things by introducing this idea and the rules around it. But the actual movie that they executed doesn't really make sense. I didn't hate it, but I definitely was like, okay, you live in a house where all your dreams can come true, and your immediate thought is, let's have a kid. Okay, I get that. Some people, that is something that is very important to them. Okay, cool. But then you're like, oh God, I'm not satisfied. I need this kid to be able to leave the house. Why? Why does that child ever need to leave the house? You live in a house that has a room that can literally become anything, including a forest. If you have a room where anything can come true, you're going to have a ton of friends who can come to your house and they can hang out with you. You can leave the house, just
Which,
not with
side
your
note,
things.
which literally happens at one point in the movie. The
Mm-hmm.
kid makes an outside that he can go to, and it's totally fine.
Yeah, the outside becomes the inside, which is the outside. And it's great. You can do that. Why do they suddenly I think this is just like a classic example of human nature where you get something you want and then you have to ruin it. And I understand that, where you're like, my life is so good now. I am bathing in diamonds and champagne and eating fish eggs all the time and wearing these beautiful gowns. How can I make my life bad again? And so then they're like, oh, now you have to have a baby. So then they have the baby and they're like, okay, that's great. We have everything we want, but now the baby has to go outside. And it's like, why does the baby have to go outside? Why is that an important thing to you? And I was very frustrated by character decisions where I'm like, why? Why is this a thing? But yet I was still very enthralled with like, the fact that the baby is now an evil baby, but now he's an evil baby boy, but now he's an evil man and he is doing bad things to his mom while he locks his father, who is not really a father. I mean, technically they're not the parents. They didn't really go through a formal adoption. They're kind of adopted parents. They're more foster parents, if anything. They're not. So I guess like the sexual assault isn't that bad. He sexually assaulted his foster mother. That's kind of better, right?
No. Wait, what did you just say? No.
I mean, incest is its own line, which is abhorrent. I feel like sexual assault of all types is abhorrent. I'm saying this wasn't the worst because they are foster parents.
Oh, so what you're saying is it was awful, but it could have been much worse.
Exactly, because there is this implication.
That's a defense of this movie somehow?
I mean, there's this implication that she might be pregnant because of him.
It's not an implication. She's holding a positive pregnancy test at the end of the movie. Is that another one of those details you missed?
It cannot be his kid. She had already left the grounds before he died, and he has to die in order for her to take anything of the room outside. So it's not his kid. It can't be. That would, although I guess this movie could break its own logic. It definitely could.
What logic?
I thought, see, this is what I mean. I thought about it so much because the other option is that she realizes she's still inside of the room. There is a house inside the house because that is a thing that can happen. That's why the lights flicker. But either way, it's not possible that she left the house and was pregnant because she left the house and the grounds before he had died. And he would have had to die first because he is a wish. So a product of a wish would also accelerate and die. So unless she was just pregnant with a grown-ass man there on the yard, which would be very uncomfortable in a lot of different ways.
I suppose it could also just be because they do establish earlier in the film that she had been pregnant for real twice and miscarried both times. And so maybe that's what they were trying to say is she went through these two bad miscarriages and then she went through this other experience that's like a metaphor for a weird, disastrous childbirth and rearing. And now she's just like, maybe she's naturally pregnant again and she's just terrified about that concept. I don't know. Like I said, I'm pretty sure there's like 6 or 7 people listed in the writing credits for this movie. And anytime you get that many people tinkering around with something, this is inevitably what happens.
You made me like the ending a lot more. Thank you. That is a good concept. I think you figured out the room. The big metaphorical discussion at the end. Is she in a room within a room? Is she pregnant with her son's kid? Although, like I said, not actually a son. It is just like a baby born of like terrible, terrible circumstances. But at least there is not that incest component. And I feel like they were really trying to drive home like that possibility, and it's like, no, but that's not the case. They probably don't share DNA. It's better, at least there are less health complications. Like, hey, that's good. They didn't go like full evil. They went like 99% evil.
It really boggled my mind that they went like they put a lot of work and effort into establishing the aesthetic and at least the concept of this house. Like when they go down into the basement where the generator is, like it's really well designed and the set is well decorated. It's got all these creepy wires and cobwebs. And then they show you how these wires and things are literally going through the entire house. Like you tear up the floorboards and it's just nothing but this nest of wiring in the floors and in the walls. Like they establish that this house, it's not just this room. This house is something. And then they do nothing with that part of it at all. Literally nothing. And I had a real sneaking suspicion, like 10 seconds into this film, that there was a really good chance I was gonna hate it, and this is what tipped me off. The very first credit that appears on screen at the beginning of the film is an original idea by Christian Volkman. And then it also tells you written by Christian Volkman. And then it also tells you directed by Christian Volkman. And then there's also a film by, like this guy credits himself like 5 times before this movie starts. And anytime I see that, I'm like, ooh, this is, that's suspiciously pretentious, and I was right. I got so many vibes off of this movie that were very similar to the vibes I got off of Darren Aronofsky's Mother, which is
I
another
also
film
love.
that I hate.
Love that movie.
I hate
love
Mother
it
with a
so much.
furious passion. It's so
great.
Oh, that's a whole nother story. I have very similar feelings about this movie. Also, I just personally, and I'm like, this is something that obviously my dislike of this movie goes even further beyond that. I personally have issues just in my taste field in movies that deal with the death of children and miscarried pregnancies, that sort of thing. Especially like infant children, like newborns and that sort of thing. There are elements of that really, like a movie like The Witch, definitely, like that's to me like the most intense, horrifying part of that film, but the rest of it is good enough that I was able to stick with it. But that to me is a very tricky area, and this one I thought handled those ideas in, like the script is so ham-fisted and shoddily written that it just wasn't good enough to justify the concepts that way that they were trying to present.
Okay, another deep breath. I want to make sure. Do I need to call a paramedic? I just
No.
You're exhaling a lot. You're not inhaling very much.
I'm good.
See, the mystery
also,
of this...
my sinuses are very stuffy today, so that might be a part of it. I'm doing a lot of mouth breathing right now.
The mystery of this movie upset you, and instead it intrigued me. So I think that's a big part of it too. Yeah. And I think for me, I was like, ooh, this house is covered in wires and we never find out why. Oh, exciting. And to you, you're like, no, tell me. Yeah.
I don't even need to know everything. They did nothing with it. Like the house itself it's classic Alfred Hitchcock MacGuffin in the sense that it actually, the impression I got is that this movie was originally like, I mean, I'm not saying like, I think the wish element was there, but I feel like a lot, like it was a much simpler movie that wasn't necessarily about a weird magic machine house with a special room that grants wishes. And that's what sort of something that started getting added in with all the tinkering and development and the multiple different writers and all this different stuff. I don't know. There's just the way it was all so very shoddily put together. And again, like I said, I didn't believe any of these actors for a minute. I did not enjoy their performances. I thought a lot of it was flat or the exact opposite, kind of overblown and too much. Just didn't work for me on any level.
Well, they can't explain the house because it is called The Room, not the house. So they were limited. They had to stick to just the room. They couldn't throw in the other stuff.
I would like to point out that we're reviewing The Room for our Spooktober in April, the day after, we also just reviewed a new release called The Cellar. You may remember that one from back in April.
I
and
certainly do.
It was very interesting to me that I watched two movies sort of in the same couple of days. About rooms in a house that do weird things and potential alternate realities and all that stuff, and I didn't like either one of them. But this one, well, I would watch The Cellar 10 more times before I ever even considered watching this movie again.
I will hold you to that. I am just going to
I mean, I'm not going to watch The Cellar ever again either. I'm just saying I would watch that one 10 more times before I ever watched this.
I'm going to tell anybody who has to give you any sort of ultimatum going forward that whatever they want, they have to either offer that thing or watching The Room. Those are your options.
Fair enough.
Shady, to end this on kind of a high note, if you had a room and you could wish for one thing, what would it be?
I would wish that I never had to experience this fucking movie. That it would be removed from my memory, Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind style. Just get it out of my existence as if it never happened. That would be the first thing that comes to mind. I'm sure if you gave me more time to think about it, I'd come up with more interesting things. But right now, I'm in a mood.
Specifically, after you had your wish granted, I would run into the room and wish that you were stuck in a pod where all you could do is watch The Room for 10 days straight. And my wish would counteract your wish. And then I would light The Room, all of them simultaneously. So you've got this movie, you've got The Room starring Tommy Wiseau, then you have Room, which is Brie Larson's movie about the award-winning book. Yes, which is a great, phenomenal book. The movie is okay, but you would have to watch all three at the same time while writing an essay about how they correlate and the messages, how they have similarities and differences between each of them. Well, and that would be my wish.
Right on. Between the Hamilton musical discussion and the discussion of wishes, we are at the very least right now at the longest recorded episode we've done to date so far, at least as of April 16th. All these people are like, are they ever going to stop? Or is JD just going to keep bitching about how much he did not like this movie? Yes.
I feel like with this being your least favorite movie of quite a while, probably outside of this podcast even, because you're this upset about it. Yeah, then I feel like it does deserve a little bit of extra time, and I just kind of let you go. I just carried away. No, I let it happen, and then when it sounded like you were done, then I responded, and then you went off, and I went, okay, it's one of those. Awesome. That's fine.
Well, I appreciate you letting me get that out of my system. We appreciate you guys for listening. As I said, we're going to be coming to you every day in October still. We got one more back title before we hit the first new title for the month.
No, we do not.
That one. Huh?
We have October
that's
6th
right.
It's
a
Thursday,
Friday, isn't it?
Wait. No. This one comes out October 5th, which is a
Tuesday?
A Wednesday. Hang on.
A Wednesday.
Let me look in the future. October 5th is a Wednesday.
So
they should have a Thursday release tomorrow.
Say goodnight, Michelle.
Good night, Michelle.